He has a new book coming, which I'm thrilled to be talking to him about this evening. I think I see him. Hello, Jay. I'm just going to add you now. And I think we're about to make it work. Yes, it's connecting.
Hey,
Hi,
how's it
how are you?
going?
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Very good. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
It's wonderful to be able to talk to you. In preparation for this interview, I'm Amanda, by the way, and everybody, hello, I'm
Of course.
Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
Nice to meet you. I'm a member of the book team here at Indigo. I work with the events team as well, and we've been using this platform to meet and talk to a lot of our authors this year and give our customers and our followers a chance to kind of get a glimpse behind the book. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about some of the work that you've done that
Totally.
brought you to the point of this book. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you get to tell us how to think like a monk? What makes you the expert?
Definitely not the expert, definitely a student of monks' minds, but I got really fortunate to meet a monk when I was 18 years old. It was the first time I'd ever met a monk of any kind.
Nice.
I didn't really know what monks did or what monks were about, and I don't think many people do. And I went there not really expecting anything. I was interested in hearing about people who'd gone from rags to riches or people who'd been through some really deep pain and struggle and come out the other side. But when I met this monk, I experienced something very different. I realized now that when I was 18, I'd met people who were rich, I'd met people who were famous, I'd met people who were beautiful and attractive and smart and intelligent, but I don't think I'd met anyone who was truly happy.
Mm.
And the monk exuded a natural, and not just energetically, but just in his presence and his tone and his energy just had a happiness and joy about him. And my 18-year-old self was like, well, there's something interesting in that. So I almost became a student of monks' minds when I was 18.
Huh.
So this book is, of course, there's personal stories and personal experiences, but this book is less about just my monk mind. It's more about the study of monks' minds for thousands of years. And research shows that monks' brains, when they're scanned, science shows that monks have the happiest, most joyful, and most present brains in the whole entire planet. And that makes it so exciting to learn about how to think like a monk, because imagine if you could have more calm, more joy, and more happiness in your own life.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, the point you bring up about science, because I think sometimes that's the leap that we need. That's the gateway that we want to understand that what we're doing is kind of been vetted, that it's worth our investment. And some of the words that you've attached to this learning are things like training, exercising, practicing. And I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about why it's just not absorbing the information and you can just go out and start thinking like a monk. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, so for me, I believe that in any transformation you want to make in life, you need stories that inspire you, you need science that helps you believe, and then you need steps to make it practical.
Right.
So in this book, I really focused on telling the stories, my story, stories of incredible people that I've studied, whether they're monks or not monks, or they were monks, stories of other people as well that I think like monks. I've got the science that I've done. We had incredible researchers that went out and had done these studies and we incorporated them in the book. And finally, the most important part is giving people the steps and the strategies to actually create that transformation. And I think that's often the missing link, that the ideas are interesting.
Yes.
The concepts can be fascinating, but if we don't know how to implement this in our life, and so you'll find every other page in the book, there's these highlighted try this sections.
Yes.
And those are there for you as you read the book to just stop, put the book down, and maybe you might even try that out for the next 3 days before you come back to the book. And I'd love for you to use the book as an experience, as a workbook, where you're testing and experimenting the ideas.
Yes.
And I think the book is really an experience and an experiment. It's not just a reading book.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting about how when I opened it up, there were certain areas that I was really drawn to. You know, I love the idea of creating ritual in your mornings and your evenings, that kind of sun up, sun down structure and how important that is. But the things I found that I was rushing through or I felt more nervous about. I was like, oh, that's interesting that I'm a little bit cautious about investing in this part and wondering why I'm not quite ready to, like, I was thinking of the one about overthinking and procrastination, right? And why we do that, and then procrastinating about thinking about it, which was the irony of the whole thing, is that I refused to do the work. And so when you broke all these things down, and in the book there are 12 major steps that you advise people to go through, and you motivate with a lot of personal stories, a lot of anecdotes to keep the pace going and to keep the motivation going. Which one for you was the most difficult?
Which one? What do you mean? Which
of the
lesson?
12 steps for you is the most challenging?
Well, I think the hardest skill of all time is always relationships.
Sure.
Because the reason is that relationships include not only your mind, but someone else's mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So now you not only have to think like a monk, you have to try and help the other person think like a monk, and then hope that you can both, so there's all of that going on all at the same time. And so I find that relationships is the most ongoing work for everyone, whether that's personal relationships, professional relationships, romantic relationships, whatever it may be. That's always the one that requires the most effort, the most work, and the most stillness to really make sure that we're trying to do that in the right way.
Yeah. I love the word that you use, which is compatibility, right? So it's not just like succeeding in a relationship or getting into a relationship or keeping a relationship, but kind of this ongoing work of adapting and compatibility. And that just seems like it doesn't end. Like that's not a destination. That seems like it's something that you're just going to be working through forever.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of this, and I think about this in a lot of things in life, that everything's almost like a lifelong journey. But if you can see the points on the map on the way, then that makes you feel better. And that's what the book's about. It's like helping you see the points on the map so you can learn to navigate it all and to get the next step right, rather than when you're just kind of blindly walking around hoping that you might get somewhere. Yes. And so the book's really a navigational guide to help you go, okay, what's my next step? Okay, I recognize that I've done that part. What do I do now? And I think that's a really great way to think, because it's about moving in the right direction rather than just trying to make a big decision.
Yes. And I think, one of the name of your podcast, I think On Purpose, that idea that that you just do something with a set intention, is really interesting for us at Indigo, because one of the things that we've been working on as a company is our goal of being a company where people can come, where you want to live with intention, where you set intentions every day, whether it's the small intention of a really elegant lunch or a really healthy menu, or something more large, like you want to understand a big concept that's happening out in culture around you, that we do these things with intention. And when we set these intentions, we're more likely to succeed. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've learned on your podcast from people who have experienced that.
Yeah, the podcast has been just such an incredible gift, and to sit down with people and people who've lived incredible lives. And what I've found is that there are 3 key habits or principles that everyone who's been on the podcast has lived by. One of the first ones is that everyone has the ability to respond to failure and rejection.
Okay.
And I think that that's a really difficult thing, but that's what really goes back to our intention. If our intention really is to make a difference in the world, or to serve, or to that we really believe in what we're trying to do, then we will go through all sorts of failures and rejections to actually get there. And so I think that's a very normal habit that's also connected to intention. Another thing on the podcast is you realize that everyone is purpose driven, that there is something beyond just making it and just having stuff that people are motivated by, whether it was about doing something that no one had done in their family, whether it was about inspiring others, whether it was about serving others through a charity or philanthropic project. There's so many incredible stories of everyone being purpose driven. And the third one that really, really sticks out to me, that I think is so important, is that the people that I've interviewed, genuinely, they just have an intention of wanting to see positive and beautiful messages spread across the world. Like they just have this effortless kindness about them.
Right.
They don't have an ego. They're very approachable and accessible. And so to me, all of those things are reflected in intention, because if you always have the intention to help someone, even if you give them some news or you share something with them that may not be may not feel good in the moment, the intention still carries through.
Yeah, I saw this thing online recently about, debates online and, a lot of conflict in families with around politics and all those difficult conversations, and the challenge to bring people along with you rather than persuade them to think like you, but how can you bring them a step further along with you? And that to me seemed such a kind way to have a difficult conversation, is that if your intention is to demonstrate kindness in such a way that they want to come along and continue to talk to you about this, surely we'll get a little bit farther along in some of these difficult conversations.
Absolutely.
How have you found this past year, this very difficult year with a pandemic and businesses shutting down? Public speaking events, I imagine, have all but disappeared. How have you stayed connected? What have you learned? What feels different?
I think personally for me, first of all, I was just really grateful that I was healthy and safe.
Yes.
And for me and my wife, the first thing that came to our mind was the health and safety of our families and our parents back in London. But moving from that, and we lost some people that we were really close to during this time in England as well.
Yeah.
And so looking at it through that lens, in terms of personal lessons and everything for me, the biggest thing was actually, it was very welcomed stillness. And so even though in the beginning the stillness was uncomfortable because, like you said, things are closing down, we're losing opportunities and so much stuff. I mean, my book got pushed back. There were so many things that changed. I wasn't able to go on tour. You're right. The public speaking engagements were slowing down. And so with all of that happening, it may seem uncomfortable, but actually it turned out to be like a very welcome stillness,
Right.
which really actually gave me so much more clarity about everything I was doing.
Yes.
And that's what I love about slowing down. There's a beautiful study that I talk about in the book, which is done on the Good Samaritans. And the Good Samaritans are obviously trained to be good people and do good in the world. But in this experiment, they told them that they had to give a speech in like 10 or 15 minutes about being a good Samaritan. And they had to walk from building A to building B, where they were learning in building A, they had the exam in building B, and they had to walk across the street and go and give this speech. Now, when they're walking across the street, there was someone on the street who was hurt. And you could see that they were hurt on the ground and their leg was grazed. And a high percentage of the Good Samaritans, because they were rushing, because they were late to give this speech, they ignored the person that was in pain and went to give their speech.
Incredible.
And so this experiment was shown to show that when you feel pressure, or you feel like you're in a rush, or you feel like everything's about getting stuff done, you actually lose your humanity. Right. And so I feel like for a lot of us, and I saw this in the world, like I feel that there was this outpouring of love and kindness and compassion from so many people in the world because we had a stillness where people could actually access that part of themselves.
Yes. Yeah, I think we had an opportunity to really evaluate horizons. Both like what we are going to do with our daily horizons, those very short hours now that you're at home, that used to feel the day would fly by. And we heard people worried about, I'm going to get bored. I'm going to need a hobby. I need to make yeast from scratch. There's all these things that I need to do to keep myself occupied. And then as we got further along, I think, people gained a bit of perspective and we began to hear conversations that were very difficult and very wide in scope, but more people had the capacity to have those conversations and participate. It's been kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's always, there's always two ways to look at everything. And I think growth is never good looking. Like as in, it's always like growth doesn't look good. And but we have to realize that if we don't grow, then things may feel good or look good, but they're not really good.
Yes.
And so that's the painful part about growth, both internal and external, both personal and collective.
Yes.
And I think the key is always to remember that we need to grow together and we need to try and guide ourselves to grow as a community, as a society, as humanity, as opposed to only trying to grow our individual agendas or egos.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of struggle? So what we can learn from struggle and why you value that.
Yeah, so monks definitely value struggle because it's going to come anyway. So if you know something's going to come and you don't learn to value it, it's even harder, right? The struggle gets harder. It's like if you know it's going to rain and you don't prepare for it or you don't learn to value it, then when it rains, you're going to be really upset and you're going to be really annoyed. And so the first principle is recognizing that struggle is going to come to all of us in loads of different ways, through different interactions, through different experiences. And therefore, we have to have an open mind to it, just to make sure that we don't actually, with that resistance, cause more issues.
Yes.
And so, you know, the great example or analogies that we would use sometimes in monk life, it's like if you're holding onto a rope and someone's trying to pull the rope, and if you keep trying to hold on tighter to it, you're just gonna like burn your hand, like the rope's gonna rub off. And so it's so important to allow ourselves to understand the value of struggle. The second reason why, or how to value struggle, is to always look to struggle and reflect on what is it trying to share with us? What's it trying to teach us? What can we learn from it? Because if we learn that lesson, then we don't have to have the exam over and over and over and over again.
Right, yes.
But if we ignore to go to class that day and we don't learn from it, then we end up just feeling completely lost again and again and again and again.
Yes.
So I think that's how we deal with struggle. And the other time during struggle is to remember not to judge yourself too hard and to be compassionate to your own self. I think that's one of the biggest things about the monk mindset, is that when you're going through a struggle, it's not like, oh, let me just push through and let me fight it off and let me shed it and let's break this. Like, it's not about breaking stuff, or it's really about letting things dissolve naturally and allowing yourself to have the compassion with yourself and forgiveness with yourself to let that happen, rather than trying to like force it off. You know, there's this beautiful theme which we were taught in as monks, which is observing nature. And I believe now there's a scientific word for it, which I believe is called something like biomimicry or bio symbiosis. And what it basically means is where you try and emulate what you see in nature in life. So if you look at how the seasons change, and they change effortlessly. If you look at a tree in autumn, it will just shed its leaves. And it's not like they all fall off on the same day, but they fall off naturally. And then if you look at it in spring, flowers just start to bloom. And so in all of our lives, we continuously have to adapt, but it's a natural process of change, not a forced process of change.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. One of the things that I thought was really interesting that you focused in on is this idea that when we are experiencing gratitude, it is a singular experience. So when we are immersed in gratitude, there's no room for other emotion. And if you talk about kind of the boon that comes with that, when you can just kind of be completely immersed in it. What's the benefit of that? Why is that an important part of your learning?
Yeah, so there's so much science on gratitude as well, whether it's improving your immunity or boosting your mood. And the number one thing out of it is deepening your relationships. So what I love about gratitude and the level of experience you talked about is when your gratitude is not just felt and experienced, but when it's expressed. So when your gratitude is actually shared. So it's not just about like, oh, I feel grateful today and I'm so happy today. It's about when you actually say, and I'll give you an example actually. Name two of your friends, two of your closest friends.
Oh, Alex and Alana.
Okay, Alex and Elena, am I saying that right? Okay, right. So Alex and Elena, this is a disclaimer. I do not know you and anything I say does not reflect your life. So let's talk about Alex. So let's say you throw a party after lockdown's over. Alex and Elena come and they come to the event, and then afterwards they text you, and Alex texts you and says, hey, I had a great time, thank you.
Right. And
now Elena messages you and she says, oh my gosh, I had an amazing time. That party was incredible. I loved the food, and that chocolate cake you made was amazing. And the games we played, this was literally the highlight of my year. Thank you so much. Now you're a grateful person, but which one makes you more happy or joyful?
Elena, because of the detail, right?
Totally.
Like just how open she was about what she enjoyed.
Exactly. The answer is so obvious, unless someone's trying to be awkward. The answer is so obvious that when you give detailed, personalized, specific gratitude, it makes the other person's day. But here's the more interesting part. Not only does it bring the other person more joy, it actually brings you more joy because you think, wow, someone loves me so much
Yes.
that they invited me to that party. Someone cares about me so much that they did all of that and allowed me to be part of that experience.
Yes.
That's the power of sharing detailed gratitude, that gives that person joy and gives you joy as well.
That's lovely, because I think often what we see, with gratitude journals is it's very, very reflective, and it can feel a little indulgent at times, right? And maybe just a bit of list making, where you feel like I'm just counting my blessings in a way, but that you've attached an action to it really allows it to be more of a movement, right?
Yeah, send a voice note, send a text message, send a video, email someone, send a gift, write a letter, be old school. Like, just there are so many ways. And if you just did that for just one person a day,
right,
just one person a day, your bond with that person will go so much deeper. And I've noticed that. I mean, and you know when it's fake and not fake too. Like, you know when it feels unreal. But I think that's why you have to you can only express gratitude to people that you genuinely feel grateful for, but you'll feel more grateful if you look at the uniqueness of an opportunity. And I'll give you an example right now. Like, I've been doing interviews like a lot this week. And every day I remind myself, I'm just like, how lucky am I that so many people are interested to train their mind for peace and purpose every day, and I get to be of service to them. And so then when I am genuinely grateful to be here, because it's such a unique opportunity. And I think for all of us, we have that in so many different ways.
Yes.
And I just think that gratitude's underestimated because we see it as this wishy-washy thing, but actually scientifically it's super powerful.
And you make a very similar point too with service, right? The idea of being at service and kind of having a servant mindset, and not just in a transactional way. So that there's lots of ways that we can show up and serve the people around us. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Service was something that was so much a part of our monk life, whether it was serving children food because they didn't have access to warm meals, or whether it was serving the homeless, or whether it was serving villages. It was such a big part of our culture and community, and such a big part of our day. We were told that the morning is for yourself and the rest of the day is for service. And so it was such a big part of our lives. And then I started looking into the science of service. And Michael Norton at Cambridge University did this fantastic study. And it showed how whether we're spending money on ourselves or others, when we do something for ourselves, our happiness doesn't go up or down. But when we spend money on other people, our happiness increases by at least 10%. Wow. And similarly with energy, similarly with time, not just money. And so when you think about service, we sometimes think, oh no, maybe I need to start a big charity, or maybe I have to start a foundation. You don't. You could volunteer at your local charity. You could volunteer at a local event. You could do it with your work team. I know that that's a beautiful thing that in companies I've worked for in the past, we would do charity away days where we would go away as a team and try and serve. Or it can be something even much more simpler. It could be helping your next door neighbor. It could be helping a friend with a challenge. The point of service is to try to help someone. Now, here's where we go wrong with it. We don't try to just support someone. We try and solve their problems. Yes. And that's where it gets tiring. That's where it gets annoying. And that's where we get frustrated because no one listens to us. Yes. And that's why we experience what is known as compassion fatigue. Right. Where you feel like, oh, I'm trying so hard. But it's like, no, you're not trying to solve someone's life. You're not responsible for that person's life. You're just trying to support and be there for them. And if you can do that, then that's service. It's lovely to think of showing up as like shoulder to shoulder and just being company on someone. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Really, it's about being present with someone while they go through their transformation. It's not being their transformation. Like, you're not going to, and I think that even as a teacher or as an author, as a speaker, like, even I always remind myself that, and I have to realize that I can't, and I get a lot of messages where like, Jay, you help me do this, or you help me do that. And I always message back and be like, no, you did that. Like, you did that for yourself. And yes, my guidance or my insight may have helped and supported you, and I love that, but I supported you in your growth. I didn't make you grow. I can't do that. No one can. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think one of the things that people most often think about, especially when they see a book that has the word monk in it, is we think about some very serious
sober meditation in a big room with brass bells and cross-legged, and it's very, very somber. And that can feel like I'm never going to get there. That is not something I have room for in my life. But you have a very different perspective on meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, all of that sounds wonderful. So, but no, so, you know, monks are actually really funny and lighthearted. And if you've ever heard the Dalai Lama speak, he's hilarious. I mean,
very
you
clever.
know, he's so childlike in a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
And so monks also know how to have fun, for sure. And I tell some stories of some of the jokes that we would make as monks or things we'd laugh at. But more importantly, meditation has just so many applications in our life. And I talk about the three main types of meditation in this book called breathwork, visualization, and mantra or chanting.
Right.
And the way I present meditation is really about how everything in life can become a meditation. And my three forms of meditation that I remember we did and how we designed our lives as monks were sight design, scent design, and sound design. So sight, scent, and sound. Sight is what you see, scent is what you smell, and sound is what you hear. So all of our senses can be engaged in a way to be uplifted. And that can be a meditation to make us present. So if we take the most basic understanding of meditation is being present,
right?
Why not use our senses? So when you wake up first thing in the morning, instead of looking at your phone, why not look at a quote that inspires you?
Right.
Or look at a paragraph from a book that moves you, or look at a picture of your family that motivates you, or look at a work of art that just starts your day in awe.
Right.
Sometimes people put pictures of their most scenic view that they would love to see as their window, but they see that as a picture and it changes your mind. And so just being present through your eyes intentionally is so powerful. That's a beginning of meditation. Right. Another way to meditate is through your scent. So why is it that we feel relaxed in spas? Or why is it that we feel hungry in a restaurant? Because your nose can help you feel certain things. So if you breathe in eucalyptus, lavender, sandalwood, you'll be so present with that scent, it will naturally calm you down and help you meditate better. So that's a beginning. And the final one, sound. We underestimate how incredibly transformative sound can be. And sound is one of the best ways of being present. And we know that sound can make us feel happy through a good song or make us feel sad through a negative song.
Right.
So what in your life, how can you sound design it differently? Your living room, your car journeys, your bedroom, to actually make you feel present in that space. What is the sound you need to hear? Is it nature sounds? Is it water sounds? Is it a special song that you like? Using the sight, scent, and sound design is a brilliant way to start being present.
And these are all very small incremental changes that someone can make just with what's around them by just paying attention to the space around them. And then once you've done that, once you kind of feel like you've got control over your space or you've created enough space for that, then what do you think about? Now that you're present, what do you do?
Well, I think the first thing is to get there. And that's a huge achievement in and of itself. And I think that's the mind. The mind always wants to know what's next and like, what do I solve next? And how do I, and it's like, well, no, actually, if we just were present, can you imagine what will come to you? And that's really what meditation's about. It's so much about being present and still and seeing what comes to you. Because your body and mind and your soul and your heart finally get to communicate with you. So I'll give you an example. If you're rushing all about the space, how likely do you think it is for your partner to say, hey, I need to talk to you? They're not going to say that because they just think that you're all over the place. So until you slow down, your partner can't be honest with you. And until you still this, your body and mind and heart can't be honest with you.
Right.
So really just allowing that stillness to make space for whatever may come, that's a great start. And of course, in the book, I break down how breath work, visualization, and mantra can actually be used to take further steps.
And I think this is one of the things that makes this book really, really special, and why I think you should all get a copy and get some for the people that you love, is that I think there's 1,000 doorways into it. I think you don't have to read it from beginning to end. You can pick a chapter and just decide that this is the difficult part of my life. This is where I'm struggling. I'm obsessed with what people think about me. I'm overwhelmed by my tasks at hand.
Or negativity.
Yeah, my mornings are a mess. You know, I'm always stressed. My evenings disappear. I'm on my phone. And so I think there's a lot of ways that people can get into this book and see themselves, see the places where they're feeling that difficulty, where they're not still. And then your voice is very present in the book. It's so interesting talking to you because you sound like the book.
Good, I'm glad.
And
That's awesome.
It's lovely. It's very, very comforting. It feels like you're across the table from me, giving me some good advice and some encouragement to make some decisions. And so you clearly took a lot of time to make sure that all of the speaking and all of the work that you've done interviewing people comes across. It's very personal. It's really
Thank you.
beautiful.
Yeah, that was the goal. That, you know, the goal's never been to try and tell people what's right, or because I don't think I know what's right for people. It's always been about bringing the tools out so that people can find it for themselves. And yeah, that was the conscious effort with the book, that people should feel like they can have me sitting next to them in their home.
Yes.
And that in that way, I can be present with lots of people at the same time, and people can get what they need from that. So I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
It's really beautiful. And thank you so much for your time this evening.
Of course.
It's been really wonderful talking to you. And for those of you who've watched, this will be available later on our Instagram television as well, and encourage your friends to watch it. I think it's so wonderful to hear from you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to meet again in the future. And
I look forward to that.
Look forward to seeing all of the great gifts that your books make this year for holiday. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for having me. Bye.